and people are going to buy this. I mean, they're going to buy it hook, line, and sinker. And you were talking about how basically what you're saying is the elite overlooked the MERS, the lack of evidence that it held. They didn't know it was going to come back and bite them, basically, right?
It appears to me that they thought that they underestimated that people would fight for their homes. Most people acquiesce and walk away. Mm-hmm. They've got all these other things going on. They probably lost their job. They've got other financial things going on. They feel like they can't do anything. It's the bank. You know, everybody thinks you need a bank account. You don't, folks. You don't. Mm-hmm. But everybody thinks that they do. And so when the big bad bank is coming after your home, what am I going to do? I'm just little old me. I can't do anything. I can't afford. I can barely pay my mortgage. I can't afford an attorney. Nothing's free. The attorneys that are fighting in this litigation, a lot of them are doing pro bono work, but people need to get paid. And there's a problem. The most people can't pay the $6,000 retainer it takes. And my friend Michelle that I mentioned earlier, she's trying to set up a coalition fund so that there would be money in a fund that people could apply for and help pay their legal bills as they're fighting this, or even get the whole ball rolling. Mm-hmm. Because they can fight it in court, and a lot of people are winning, the ones that do get to court. So this would just take that right out from under them, you know.
Can you talk more about the conflict of interest? I mean, it seems like all the people that were on the board of directors of MERS are also investors. I mean, it seems really incestuous. Do you agree with that, or?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. It's like that all the time. It's like the Monsanto Act. It's like every piece of legislation, when you look at the groups that are lobbying for this, or the groups that help write these pieces of legislation, or the senators or House of Representatives that are championing these bills, all get kickbacks from the people that would benefit from this. Like the SNAP program, they took $39 billion over 10 years out of the SNAP program, the supplemental food. So people who are getting food stamps are either not going to get food stamps, or they're going to get a lot less. And 101 million people are on food stamps right now. 47.3% of the recipients of food stamps are children.
Wow.
So and the people who said that we need to defund these social programs, these people get kickbacks in the six-figure digits from Big Agra and all these other companies that just don't want to help out the social welfare. They want to remove social welfare. They're defunding social welfare, kind of weaning us off of it at a time when people actually need it.
Well, how does this bill, or how would this bill affect people that want to get a mortgage loan, people that were in a foreclosure situation, or people that are now in a foreclosure situation? Can you address some of those scenarios?
Well, absolutely. The problem is that it legitimizes MERS. So if you have filed a complaint, you have lost your legal standing. If you were to file a complaint in the future, you would have no legal standing to do so. And those homes that won in court, the bank would then be able to go back in time and take you back to court and get your home back, because MERS is legal. And that was the scariest part for me. That was the question that I had. I was talking with my friend Michelle when she brought this to me, and I said, well, will they be able to take the homes away from the people who already got them in court? And when I asked that question, my cell phone connection dropped. And I had to call my friend back, and we couldn't get through to each other. We tried 4 times. So finally I texted her and said, we'll talk about this later. Mm-hmm. And I knew that if I'm losing cell phone connection and I don't live in a place where my cell phone is compromised, then they don't want me discussing this.
Right. You explained it really well in another interview I heard, you called it the Jeopardy Clause, and you were talking about the difference between civil and criminal. Could you go over that? Because the way you explained it was very clear, and I think that would be good information to get out.
The Jeopardy Clause in criminal is, I'll use murder. If you are indicted for murder and you are acquitted or found not guilty, they can't then turn around and come back at you for murder. That's double jeopardy. They can't do that. So when they bring a murder case forward, they make sure that they have everything perfect because they don't want to lose the case. And civil has a version of the Jeopardy Clause that works much the same way as the criminal counterpart. In Jeopardy, which is the civil version, can terminate in 4 instances: during acquittal, after dismissal, after a mistrial, and on appeal after conviction. And so what this means is that the homeowner who previously won a lawsuit against the bank and kept their home would now be able to be under threat of the bank again to have the case reopened under new evidence arguments. And the new evidence would be the passing of PATH and the legalization of MERS. Bank of America could then come back and say, well, MERS has been legalized. And they can take your home away from you if you won your home with the first case on acquittal, after dismissal, on a mistrial, or on appeal after conviction, and that has to do with the criminal version, but we're applying it to civil. So if your case was acquitted because the bank couldn't prove that they signed the documents through robo-signing, they can't prove that someone actually took their hand, took a pen, and took it to the paper. So they lose. You lose. The banks lose, and you win your home. And with PATH passing, they can then say, well, this system is legal. This system is federalized. And so I'm coming back and saying that the acquittal or the dismissal or the mistrial is now illegitimate based on new evidence being the passage of PATH. So they can come back and sue you again for your house. And after you've gone through one lawsuit and you're still paying off bills from that previous lawsuit, who can afford to go through another one?
Right. Let alone the first time.
Right. So in the second time, if you're financially strapped, chances are you're not going to be able to fight and you'll lose your home. And that's what they're banking on. Mm-hmm. No pun intended.
Suzanne, I've heard you even say that people don't even know if their home has been paid off. Can you talk more about that?
If your home was securitized through the MERS system, look on the top of your mortgage note, and there will be an 18-digit number. It will start with the letter M for MERS. And you will know that your mortgage was securitized.
Okay.
And if you need more information, there's a gentleman who wrote a book called Clouded Titles. I cannot remember his name. His name always escapes me, but the book is Clouded Titles. He has a website. Go look him up. He does radio shows, and he is available for communication through emails, and he can explain much better what to do once you see that you've got that 18-digit MERS number on the top of your mortgage note, and how to proceed.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and take our next break. Listeners, today my guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com, and we'll be back momentarily on the Truth Seekers radio show.
If you're the kind of person that likes to drive a lot and your car is a little older and out of the normal warranty, keep listening. What's going on underneath the hood of your car? If your car is out of warranty, you're at risk of expensive repair bills. Now, for a couple of dollars a day, you can get an extended protection plan for your car. You love your car, so why not give it a little extra care and make sure if something goes wrong, your bank account is safe. Literally, for a couple of dollars a day, you can give yourself peace of mind that you've purchased a top-tier vehicle repair coverage plan. Call the Auto Protection Network right now and ask how you could save an additional $500 on your policy.
800-979-9252. 800-979-9252. 800-979-9252. That's 800-979-9252.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Truth Seekers radio show. Today my guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com, and we're discussing the mortgage fraud, foreclosures, and the link to Agenda 21. And Suzanne, could you give us any other contact information? Or I've been saying your website is OccupyCorporatism.com. Do you want to talk a little bit about the radio show or give any other contact info?
Well, my radio show is on a hiatus. I just moved into a new house, so I had to put my show on hold. But you can listen to the archives on American Freedom Radio. Just look under show hosts or put in the Region 10 report in their search, and you'll be able to listen to the old shows. I do a lot of other interviews, so you can catch me anywhere. I'm on Lori's Talk News Radio on Sundays, 7 to 9 Pacific Time. And I just kind of show up anywhere. But that's
Well, I've heard you talk about, well, in the article you were talking about the JEB Fund. What is that exactly?
the JEB Fund is Jeb Henserling's kind of like here. Let me. It's a super PAC, so people will give campaign contributions to him through this super PAC, and it's the Jobs, Economy, and Budget Fund, because this is his platform. And so he takes money from all the people that I mentioned. They all contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars, which, if you add it all up, comes out to multi-million dollars that they put into his fund. But the PATH bill has implications in retail and also in energy. And MasterCard, those Cash America International and CheckSmart Financial that were there, let's say that you had a JCPenney card. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody still does, but let's say you do. And you charged off $300 or $400 a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Well, MasterCard or JCPenney's or whoever it is can come back after you and say, well, I'd like that $300 back.
Okay, but God forbid you had tens of thousands. Which
most people do, charge everything.
Uh-huh.
You got to have a good credit score. If you don't have a good credit score, you can't even get a job. Actually, they're checking your credit score.
Wow.
So yeah, they say that if you don't pay your bills, you're not responsible and you wouldn't show up to work.
And it's like, well, why would I need a job if I had loads of money?
Exactly. Well, yeah, when you go to get a loan, you have to have exorbitant amounts of collateral. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't need the loan.
Right. So let's tie this whole thing up back to the land grab and your Agenda 21, because you had some good info on that. So this all goes back to just one big land grab, correct?
Yes. Ben Bernanke calls it QE3. Mm-hmm. QE infinity. And he just said that he's going to continue to do the QE. And what that is they're buying the mortgage-backed securities at $85 billion a month. They're buying the mortgage notes. The Federal Reserve is the biggest landowner in the United States right now because they are holding all of those notes that were securitized, and they are continuing to accumulate more and more notes as they pay out to the banks. Yes, it's a bailout to the banks, but even bigger, it's a land grab. Now, For your listeners, will probably remember that in the 70s, a professor put together a map of the United States indicating areas where non-human use, little tiny black dots on either coast where the megacities will be located, and how would they be able to acquire the majority of the continental United States? Through the mortgage-backed securities debacle, through the housing bubble that they created, with the Federal Reserve acquiring all of those mortgage notes. Every single note that they have in their hands is another piece of property that they own. And I want people to understand it's not just your neighbor down the street who's being foreclosed on. Every single piece of property in the United States at some point had a mortgage. If you're renting a house from somebody, or if you're renting an apartment from a company, if they don't pay their bills, guess what? Everybody goes out.
And that was happening a lot. I knew people that were renting places, and come to find out, the landlord wasn't even making the mortgage payments, and it was a surprise to the renter. So that was happening.
Yes, and it's happening a lot. It's also the farms. It's any piece of property. You know, a lot of people get stuck on homeowners, and that is directed information, because they want you to think that the mortgages are just for homeowners. No, it's for everybody. If you own a piece of property and you have a business on it, and the bank forecloses on the property, your business has to move. Where are you going to go if you don't have any other place to go? So you have to close down your business.
You know, I think you just wrote a recent article where you talk about something called Living Cities Project, and when I was reading that, I think it was, you were talking about how victims of foreclosure could easily be entered into this pipeline for something that they were calling the Living Cities Project, and that just seemed to dovetail so perfectly with this foreclosure situation. Do you think there's a deliberate connection there?
Yeah, the article is 6 things you need to know about the bankster takeover. And that was part of another article that I'd written, and I was looking at what's going on with the banking, and reading a lot of articles that are coming out that my peers are writing. I want people to understand the end game is Agenda 21. That's what they want. And so Living Cities is this great little idea that a bunch of banks came up with. J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, the Ford Foundation, AARP, Bank of America, Citigroup, and the Rockefeller Foundation. And so Living Cities is a privately funded group that is going to help all of these families who are displaced by foreclosures. That sounds great. It's wonderful. Give them some place to live. Let's see what's available. Oh, it's all of these Agenda 21 shoeboxes, like in New York. They just built 275 to 300 square foot apartments. San Francisco built 150 square foot apartments. Boston built 450 square foot apartments. Oregon just erected the 267 to 385 square foot apartments. Is it going to be cheaper to live in a shoebox? No. We're talking about $850 to $1,500 a month.
Oh my gosh.
To live in a cell. To live in a 4x10. And the Daily Mail put out an article showing these huge 25, 30, 40-story high-rises in the lower income areas in Beijing. And they took aerial shots of the people inside their little cell that's as big as your bathroom. If you have what my husband likes to call a one-booty bathroom. And the aerial shots tell it all. These people have shelving all up on the walls. They only have room for a bed. They're eating on their bed. They've got a little makeshift stove that you would take to like a camping trip, and that's their stove.
That's not living. I'm sorry. That's not living.
Well, what these people say for the shoeboxes is, come on, you're doing all your living outside your house. You're working outside your house. You're socializing outside of your house. You just need a place to sleep. You don't need all that room.
Yeah. Well, in your opinion, so if somebody does have a paid off mortgage and they say, well, Suzanne, I know I'm safe because I own my home. What do you say to them if we're looking into the future with where all this stuff is going? Are they really safe?
Check and see if you've got that 18-digit number that starts with the letter M. If you do, you're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I talked to my friend Michelle, I asked her, how many homes have been foreclosed on? I mean, can I say that 1/3 of the property in the United States has been foreclosed on? And she says, we have no idea. Those who are working in the foreclosures industry, keeping people in their homes, activists who are working with the lawyers who are man enough to actually go up against the banks and win these cases, they have no clue how deep this goes. The assumption is every single piece of property will eventually turn up in this mortgage-backed securities debacle. It is simply a matter of time. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that to scare people. I say that so that people can be vigilant and look up things now. You don't want to have the sheriff come knocking on your door because you thought that you were paying off your mortgage. You thought you were paying on the principal, but you never got to the principal because you've been paying all of these bank fees and all these late fees because they've been holding your paperwork. Because when you go to remodify your home, they hold the paperwork for 2 or 3 months, and then an hour before midnight when they're supposed to have been already filed, they go ahead and file it and say, oops, we lost it, but we found it and we filed it an hour before it was due, and oh, your modification did not get approved. And by the way, people pay for that modification. There are, and people have to be wary. The modification process is a scam. And there are people in the foreclosures circles who have picked up on this, and they work with Bank of America. And be very wary of people in the foreclosure circles telling you remodify and everything will be fine. It'll cost you $2,000 or $3,000, but it'll save you in fees and attorney's fees and court costs down the road. Mm-hmm. Don't do it. Don't do it. As scary as it is, find an attorney. Like I said, Staffney Law Firm in Washington State, and they network with people all across the country. It might be that they can advise you with an attorney somewhere in your area.
Right.
But don't take the modification. Those people are working with the banks. They get a kickback. You pay $3,000 for that modification that doesn't go through, and that guy who told you to go ahead and refi or modify your mortgage got 15% for signing fee. Okay? Mm-hmm. So he's making money off of you losing money and going to court anyway and losing your house.
Unbelievable.
It is. It's unbelievable. The people who claim to be helping are helping the banks hurt us. And with everything that's going on, people really need to look into where they're getting their information, who they're talking to, and make sure that it is a credible source. The thing that I do with my journalism needs to be done across the board for everyone listening to this show, and anyone who pays attention to alternative media in general. There is too much disinformation. There's not enough people who are sourcing documents so people can read the actual document and not just another article that mentioned that document.
Right.
And I try really hard to get those actual documents so people can read them and get the information that is actually going to help them instead of just directing them to a CNN article that mentioned it, and then you have to copy and paste a title and look for it. And by the way, if you ever want to find, this is just a little hint for people who do research for your listening audience, anytime I want to find an actual document, I find the title of the document and put PDF at the end of the search. And 9 times out of 10, I find the actual document.
That's a good idea. Okay. All right, listeners, today our guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com, and we will be back on the Truth Seekers radio show momentarily.